All right, so I think we started recording. This is the first episode of the unnamed Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast. We're still workshopping that one. We'll figure it out. But I'm going to be the host today. I'm John. You can find me on Twitter at JohnJ7733. I'm joined by Thor Akerley and John Fosbury. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
My name is Thor Akerley. I'm a former analyst at fantasyteamadvice.com. You can find me on Twitter at Thorios, like Oreos, except Thor before it, the letter N, milk on Twitter, or in a lot of Discord channels on the internet.
Yeah, he's just at Thor in Discord. And I'm John Fosbury. Call me Foz. I'm on Twitter at Fosbury64, F-O-Z, Berry, as in like Berry 64, and junior analyst at Fantasy Team Advice, and an actual football coach in real life, which is awesome. High school football. So I bring the little film grind analysis and football guy stuff to all these nerds here.
Yep.
Keeps us grounded.
Yeah. Yep. Run the damn ball.
We'll see your teams are going to be strongly running back based, I'd assume, in the future. So this is my first podcast. I don't know about Thor and Foz, but maybe.
I feel like me and Thor tried to do this like 6 years ago, and it was just a disaster, and so we never did it again.
Yeah.
But now we all know a little bit more, so maybe we can figure it out this time. So the idea behind this podcast, we were going to just do a bunch of Dynasty mock drafts and kind of figure out trends and tendencies of each other, but also help us figure out the market of where places are people actually value players and how different players might build their different types of teams in a dynasty format. So we decided to start off with just doing 5 rounds. We're going to continue this draft for probably at least 20. We haven't really decided the end. Kind of gets a little watered down at that point, and we'll all have pretty solid built teams, and our strategies and ideas will be shown. So for this league that we're doing our draft today, it's one quarterback, not super flex, with 2 starting running backs, 3 starting wide receivers, 2 flex, 1 with a running back wide receiver, 1 with a wide receiver tight end, 1 tight end, and then the rest are just benches. And it's going to be a half PPR, no tight end premium, no tiered PPR, none of that stuff. Just pretty standard type of league. I think it's probably one of the more popular types, just the half PPR standard, no super flex. So just we'll jump right into it. So we did our draft order. We're each having 4 different teams, and we're 12 teams total. So to figure out the draft order, I just did a random number generator, and Thor got lucky and he gets number 1. So he's going to get 1, 4, 7, and 10. Foz got number 2, so he gets picks 2, 5, 8, and 11. And then I got the last, so I get 3, 6, 9, and 12. So we'll just we're going to hit on some of the high notes. We'll kind of break down each pick where we feel it's needed. If we have any comments, we'll make them. So Thor, if you want to get started.
Yeah, so I guess just kind of diving into the first round and my first pick, I thought it was a pretty easy decision to go McCaffrey. The one fear, I guess, is that the Panthers offense might just stay in kind of a limbo land and not be a super competitive team unless they get Deshaun Watson and keep Bridgewater. We kind of saw the defense really struggle last year and McCaffrey get hurt. But even if they're not competitive, McCaffrey should still put up RB1 numbers, without really much effort. We've seen it from him for years now, and his role in the offense isn't going to change with that giant contract, and especially with Bridgewater at quarterback. Actually with Watson, it could hurt him a little bit. Who wouldn't check down as much, but as long as Bridgewater's there and still throwing a lot of checkdowns, I'm not too worried. I just want them to be competitive and not feel like they need to bench McCaffrey or rest him later in the season. That's my only concern. It's really a stupid concern, to be honest. But
do you have any concern if there's any fuel to the fire of him being part of a trade to get Watson?
That was my question as well.
I heard that was all smoke. I don't think that would happen. But if that did happen, I would be really concerned, just from like being the Texans with who knows who is their quarterback, and I would probably move him down to 3 or 4, honestly, if he did go to the Texans.
I mean, the Texans did just cut Duke Johnson, so we know there's a need there at running back.
They just gave up on their number one running back from last year. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have no problem with McCaffrey at number 1, but if he does get traded, I think I agree he has to move down. So
I have a problem with McCaffrey at number 1. It's just the number 1 running back in fantasy football should be Saquon, even in Dynasty. So I felt really lucky to get him at number 2. I would have picked him number 1 overall had I had him. It's more about like if you just take Saquon's talent and project it out. We know what he can do on one of the worst situations for a running back in the NFL, on a team that can't push the ball down the field, with a defense that 2 years ago couldn't stop anybody, with an offensive line 2 years ago that couldn't block anybody. And this year, he gets hurt. He has the year-ending injury, and it's like, tanks his season. But then the offense was ascending when you have this offensive line that graded out pretty well in terms of short yardage blocking, and made Alfred Morris and Wayne Gallman fantasy assets down the stretch. So like you add all that up, and you assume the Giants are gonna get a little more competitive. Their QB play is obviously an issue, but Jones does push the ball down the field, and that defense is ascending, so they should be in games more where Barkley's gonna have to be a big part of he's gonna be a big part of their success. So I think Barkley's arrow is just pointing up in like the biggest direction, and I wouldn't be concerned with any injuries. He has tore his ACL early in the year, so he should be 100% come camp. But I'm like, I love Saquon Barkley at that 2 overall. Love it.
Yeah,
absolutely love it. And he's a guy, like, if you have in your dynasty league, if there's a Saquon owner who's a little apprehensive about his injury history, or and you can get him for a first round pick, or something like that, like maybe not a high first, but mid first, that would be an ideal scenario.
Here's my problem with that, is that surprisingly they're only 6 months apart in age, and at this point, Saquon's coming off an ACL tear, and even when McCaffrey was, even in the games he played last year, McCaffrey was averaging 30 fantasy points per game. Saquon obviously didn't do that. I think their situations are pretty similar. Neither team is like great. The Giants' offensive line might be slightly better, but at this point, like, I think talent-wise, you can say Saquon's better, but to this point in their careers, I don't see how you could put Saquon above him based on what we've seen and how you can project both of these guys and their teams going forward.
Well, I just think moving forward, I mean, that's the name of the game, the Dynasty Startup Draft. I mean, difference of opinion, I guess. I'm just looking, I look at that Giants team with, a run the damn ball head coach and a run the damn ball offensive coordinator who features the running back a lot, and an offensive line that's being, that's improving. And I'm sure with, Joe Judge and Jason Garrett there, we're looking at more offensive line improvement. And they changed, and even, to the point where they changed offensive line coaches in the middle of the year last year, and ended up being a good thing. So I think they figured out what they want from their offensive line, and that's going to have a huge impact on Saquon, who's already just a supremely talented player. Like
I agree.
He's, like, I feel like the last 2 years I watch him and he just run. Those stuffed runs are just all happening all the time. Like if he is give him even just a little bit of a lane moving forward, we're cooking.
All right.
I also think his acquisition cost is like McCaffrey, you're not going to be able to buy. I think Saquon you could buy. I think
true. I agree with that.
Yeah, with the injury season, And so moving from one injury concerned player to another, I took Dalvin Cook at number 3. He's had back-to-back 1,000 rushing yard seasons, and the Vikings don't really seem to be wanting to change their motto of just run the ball. So similar to Saquon, he's in a run-heavy situation. Of course, the Vikings did add Justin Jefferson to replace Diggs, so there is a little more like they kind of stayed the same as far as threats go. They used Jefferson a little differently, um, but Dalvin felt like a really safe pick and going to continue to get used as a workhorse running back. Even Alexander Mattison, when Cook went down, he had good games. So their scheme is strong and heavy towards the running. And it seems like they're going to feed him the ball as much as they can. I did consider taking Jonathan Taylor here just to get the younger guy, and he showed why he was worth it. But I had no problem taking Dalvin Cook over him. So what do you guys think of that one? Any problems there? Or?
So I'm looking at his contract. Here's a situation. I think I'm theorizing here, but I think it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Say the Vikings don't make the playoffs again this year. Their defense has a lot of holes. Their offensive line has, been bad the last 2 years. It hasn't affected Dalvin Cook. He's been great. But Vikings miss the playoffs again. Do you think Zimmer survives? And then if they fire Zimmer and Cook has an out after 2022 where they can cut him for $6 million, what are we we could be looking, you could have a change in the offense where Dalvin Cook doesn't produce as much and then they just cut him and who knows? He's Melvin Gordon on the Broncos at that point, right? Like, who knows what happens from there?
Right.
I think Melvin on the Broncos did fairly well when he got the ball. So if you can put him in a situation that's decent, then. But he does need the ball. He needs to get as many carries as he got this year or maybe not this year. This year he did really well, but he had 312 rushing attempts this year. So that's a ton. So if he broke 1,000 with only 250 in 2019. So if he can get to that number in another offense, then it's still worth it, in my opinion.
I have zero problem with the Cook pick here. My fear with him is that he'll be 26 by the start of next year. And we've just been down the road so many times of running backs getting past that age 25, 26 season and then having a decline. Like you don't see it coming, you don't think it's coming, and it just happens. And like Foz said, if for some reason the Vikings decide to move on, I doubt he'll find himself in as favorable as a situation, at least, but potentially as like the unquestioned number one running back there.
Yeah.
But I think you built the team really well around Cook. You have Jones, you have Elliott. Like you built a team that's going to be really competitive in the next 2 years, 2-year window. And I mean, if I had Cook there, I would have done something similar, I think.
Yeah. So if you're taking a player like Cook or some of the other players that go in this first round, you have to try and build a team that's going to compete immediately. Some of these other teams we'll see later are built to compete this year, but also a little bit further into the future. So this team, by drafting Cook, I did set myself up to have to compete this year. So that was kind of my strategy with that one.
Yeah, that's a really high upside team for sure. Like, I feel like that could be very volatile as well, where, if Aaron Jones goes somewhere and can't handle being the guy and Dak moves on from the Cowboys, or Ezekiel Elliott really is.
Oh yeah.
Like that could be an albatross, but like also you could get, it's very similar to one of our league members in our Dynasty league, right? That has Ezekiel Elliott and James Conner and Christian McCaffrey. So it can go, this could be your winning this year, or you're in trouble. This is a contract. Like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So all right. So let's move on. Or unless someone else had anything else with Cook.
Yeah. No. I was gonna. Yeah. And if it were me, I would have gone Jonathan Taylor personally, but that's who was available for me next. So that's who I took. Kamara definitely crossed my mind, but with Breeze likely to move on, and what we saw from Kamara with Taysom Hill, I was a little hesitant just with the receptions, but which had buoyed his fantasy value for so long. But he was still good. He's obviously a really, really good rusher too, and I'm sure he'll still retain RB1 value. Which is why Foz took him there at the next pick. But I felt really comfortable with Taylor. He's in an amazing situation in Indianapolis with an elite offensive line. Wentz should be better, reuniting with Frank Reich. If you put Saquon on this Colts team, he'd be the RB1 in Dynasty.
Yep.
No question. And Jonathan Taylor, in my mind, is a similar athlete and player to Saquon, and he's just a couple of years younger and in a better situation. So I feel like I got a really good value there, number 4 with Taylor.
Absolutely. If Taylor had fallen to me at 5 there, absolutely picking him. My Kamara pick, that's as high as I would draft Alvin Kamara, given the situation with the Saints and what Thor was saying about how he produced with Hill and the QB situation with Breeze moving on. So I co-sign everything Thor said about Jonathan Taylor, and I'm not going to spend any time on Alvin Kamara because that's literally as high as I would pick him. Like I wouldn't draft any of the other, the other guys are receivers. So
yeah,
I'm good with the Jonathan Taylor pick and Alvin Kamara pick, and no concern. Obviously, the concern with Kamara, but no real problem with taking him where you took him. So
right. And this is a clear these are the top 5 picks in most dynasty leagues right now. But I'm curious, Foz, did any of the receivers come into your thought process here at 5 instead of Kamara?
Not particularly. Tyreek was is my number 1 wide receiver in Dynasty right now, just because of his age and situation on his team, and he has no signs of slowing down. I think the only thing that can stop Tyreek Hill is him. So there was no thought of Devontae or DK, which I can't wait to ask you about DK Metcalf, because that's not where I thought that pick was going. But no, so it was Kamara all the way when those 4 went. It was kind of like, the last girl at the bar type situation. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
just Alvin Kamara. And then those receivers, I think Hill would have been my first one, and I was happy to get him with that 8th pick there.
Yeah. So for Adams, I know he's on the older side, but my Dalvin Cook kind of set me up the same way. I kind of felt that I think that Adams is going to still be the number 1 wide receiver this year and possibly next year. I think we probably have at least 2 more really high-level years out of Devontae Adams, and I wanted to build a team that could compete fast. I kind of messed that up a little bit later, but we'll get to that one. But I like Adams a lot, and I wanted to build something that could compete real fast, especially knowing I had a decent amount of picks till my next one. It kind of felt like that was the way to go. I can see taking Metcalf, Hill, AJ Brown, even Justin Jefferson kind of can jump up there in a little bit. But I just went with Adams because I knew that he will produce this year as long as Aaron Rodgers is still there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like I have a hard time drafting someone as the number 1 overall player the year after they're the number 1 overall player. I know it's like, especially if it's like Devontae Adams with, what did he have, 17 touchdowns or something? That's the high watermark, That's especially when when you're in a startup and you're projecting, for 2 or 3, 4 years down the road as well. I mean, that was my Hill rationale, where 4 years from now, Tyreek Hill's gonna be 30 years old, and it's like Patty Mahomes isn't going anywhere. And you best believe they're gonna keep Tyreek Hill around, and that was it there. And the whole Aaron Rodgers thing is so murky. I don't trust the Aaron Rodgers thing. I know it's weird, but I feel like that the Packers team is so strange with LaFleur and how they operate how that whole operation runs is just, I don't know. I know that's there's absolutely no statistics to back any of what I just set up. It's just
they constantly are trying to make Aaron Rodgers angry, is what it seems. They're just doing everything in their power to do that.
Yeah. So
every year in and year out. So I see the concern, but
It's like, what if they're at the end of the first round and this could be the year, right? They didn't draft any of these wide receivers last year. They're at the end of the first round where they're going to have a guy like Terrence Marshall or Rondell Moore or Kadarius Toney just like hanging out there. And now you're talking like another mouth that Aaron Rodgers will probably want to feed.
I think Adams is the overall wide receiver 1 in that room, no matter who they bring in. So it could take away some of his touches, but I don't think that it's really a huge threat. That hurts the secondary guys there, but I don't think it really hurts Adams.
Right. He is someone that I have him in another dynasty league where I'm probably going to try to shop him a little bit this year. But there's no question that the situation's not going to change. This is still an elite offense, and he's going to produce, for at least another, he should produce at a high level for another couple of years. So if you can build a team around that, you should do it. But just keep in mind that, yeah, you know what I'm going to say.
I was going to say, like we said, I did not do a great job at building the right team to have Devontae Adams on so far. I need to hit the lottery with my later picks to make it work with this team. So
yeah, you need Etienne to get to the 49ers.
Exactly. I need that like really bad for this team to be anything. So
right.
All right.
But yeah, so for me, I know Foz clearly doesn't love the Metcalf pick. And I agree. I think Tyreek Hill, Adams, Metcalf are all in their own tier. And then Brown, Jefferson, Diggs kind of in the 1B tier to me. And I don't know who I would have gone if I had John's pick before, but Metcalf versus Hill is tough. I as a young wide receiver lover, I took Metcalf. He's 23. Him and Russ absolutely love each other. They've been talking about breaking the all-time touchdown record. The posturing from Russ's group about a trade and he just wants more control of the player personnel decisions in Seattle. And can you blame him? Like the Seattle front office has made so many poor decisions, not giving him an offensive line, done stupid trades, just not helping not helping the team at all. Like, why are you giving up first for the whatever his name is, the safety from the Jets? Jamal Adams. Like, get this guy. You don't need a strong safety in today's NFL. It's just not that important. But Metcalf was number 2 in the NFL in air yards. Like, his opportunity is elite. He's going to be tethered to Russ for, in his prime for another 7 years. Adams has what, 3, 4, 5, maybe at most. Hill is 27.
And how many of those Adams years are with Aaron Rodgers too?
Right, exactly.
Like 37.
I agree, exactly. And right, and Hill will probably have Mahomes for a while, but Hill's game, I don't think Hill's game is going to age well either. So, I'm pretty happy with the Metcalf pick, and I think in a few years we'll look back on this and smile.
It's going to be hard for Russell Wilson to throw to DK Metcalf when he's on the Bears.
I think you're going to be happy with the Metcalf pick for a long time. I think it's totally worth it. But when we had this draft, when we did the mock, his ADP was the 19th overall. So this was the second largest jump in ADP or reach above ADP in the first round.
Yeah.
We'll get to the next highest in a couple minutes, but so like you reached pretty high for him, and he is in that top 4. So I'm just curious why his ADP is so low.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Do you think everyone should reach this high? Because I think he's locked for a first round pick.
I think he should be a first round pick because you look at like the guys after him, and I bet a lot of these running backs are going before him now. But there's a lot of these guys aren't really established yet. And Henry's getting older. Chubb's almost 26. And then Swift, Dobbins, Akers, Sanders, Jones. I'd rather have the guy I know that's going to produce for the next 7 years with Russ.
Yeah, I think DK is a first round lock. Even if you look at those other wide receivers too, it's like it's not like I'd rather have probably Hill and then maybe Diggs or Jefferson, but it's not like it's obviously close, and I probably still draft Metcalf over both of those in the first round. So his ADP being 19 is just entirely inappropriate.
It makes no sense. So,
unless Russ gets traded, then
Yeah, so maybe that's baked into a little bit, but I doubt it. Not yet, at least. I don't think
it's only been like a week of that, right?
there's not enough. There hasn't been enough time for that to really seep into the ADP yet, I'd guess. So, especially Dynasty. So,
yeah,
we'll have to wait and see. But I think that pick's a good pick. It's just it was just a big jump above ADP, which made no sense. So, or the ADP made no sense.
Got to shoot your shot.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, then Foz took Tyreek Hill, the 10, what is it, 7?
108.
108.
Yeah. I feel like I kind of talked about Tyreek Hill. Just, like Thor saying 27, I understand there's like, if he's a speed receiver, that can, kind of fade away pretty fast as he gets older. But I just don't, I feel like if we're going to play for, if he's, as fast or slightly slower than he is for 3 more years, he's elite, right? And he's on an elite offense, and they're not going anywhere. I mean, he's the wide receiver 1 for me, moving forward over Devontae, over Metcalf. I don't see, barring injury, how Tyreek Hill doesn't finish in the top 3. Like I just don't see his range of outcome without an injury in the top 3.
Agreed.
Yep. I can't argue there. So my pick, the 109, I went with AJ Brown. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Not too many people have done it. A good amount, but normally they repeat again. So I know he's had the off-season knee injury or knee surgery, but he got it really early in the off-season, so I'm not that worried coming out. I think he'll be right back to full strength, no problem. The offense is a little scary sometimes, but he's the clear number 1, so I'm not all that worried. So
new OC.
Yeah, that could be a problem, but I don't think that even with the new OC, I don't think you move that far away from having him as your 1. He's clearly the best receiver on that team that is under contract. So we'll see what they do for the rest of the offseason and what they show us. But I think AJ Brown I'm happy with that one. There's a couple other guys I considered, but I was happy to take Brown there.
Yep. Totally fair. And, I think, like I said, Brown, Jefferson, Diggs, probably all in their own tier, and Hopkins and Ridley arguably too. And, with Jefferson, the situation should remain relatively stable. And he's 22 and just had the best rookie season for a wide receiver of all time. So that's all I needed.
Hard to argue with that one.
Yeah, that's an exciting pick. When we were doing this, I was like thinking, like, how early is too early to draft Justin Jefferson? Like,
right?
Because I feel like he's a guy you just want on your team.
Right.
Yep. And Jefferson's ADP was 24 at the time of this, which again, that makes no sense. I don't know how he's that late.
What website are you?
Fantasy Football Calculator. A lot of the other sites aren't really up to date right now because it's so early in the off season. I'd argue that they're not up to date either. And a lot of the players, there's actually a decent amount of people that were missing. But yeah, that one didn't make much sense. So I think you need to take him there.
Right. I think no question he's a first round pick. And, generally just from like a dynasty perspective, like I prefer to take running backs early in drafts. And I prefer to know that I'm going to have like a stud running back or 2 on my dynasty team because I like to win. I like to win my leagues as fast as I can. But in this case, like I don't feel super comfortable with Chubb or these other running backs, that are young that haven't really fully established themselves yet. I like a lot of them. I believe in their talent, but I think with these receivers that just went off the board, I think that's the correct move at this point in drafts, instead of reaching on some of these running backs, which may not have the RB1 ceiling just yet.
Yeah, fully agree.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Chubb next, and it was one of those things. Chubb's just one of these guys. It's kind of like Derrick Henry, where I don't want to draft them. It's just these like big running backs that require, your 25 carries and, a power offense scheme. And all that is tough. So when my draft of Chubb kind of set up my build for the rest of this Foz 4 team, where I knew I was going to go running back no matter what on the other side of the turn. So I kind of double barreled Chubb and Swift here with, Chubb, who's getting up there to, age 26, like Thor said, but he's still under contract. He's in a contract year this year. The offense is ascending. They are one of those power run teams. And so I kind of hedged later in round 5 by picking Kareem Hunt, who just got extended. So either way, I anticipate one of these two moving on from the Browns after this year. And if it's Chubb, odds are it's going to be Chubb, then, I still have my Kareem Hunt exposure to the Browns power running game. And then DeAndre Swift, who I am super excited about, in terms of an offense that is going to be playing from behind, and DeAndre Swift, who is is going to be a 3-down running back on this offense, who wants to run the ball with Matt Campbell as their head coach, and who is their OC? I'm just blanking on his name right now, but they hired one of these, is it Bevel? Was it Bevel who? Maybe it was Darrell Bevel. I can't remember, but it's one of these run the damn ball offensive coordinators.
Yes.
So we're talking like, DeAndre Swift getting 25 carries, young, explosive. I think he's what us Patriots fans thought Sonny Michel was going to be coming out of Georgia. But I'm just like, that's kind of like, the Chubb pick kind of dictated how he's going to build the team.
Yeah.
So it was my favorite pick. It wasn't a sexy pick, but I feel like it's the rest of the team kind of is backing up where Chubb is and where he's going to be moving forward.
Yeah. So, getting the 112 and 201, again, I didn't feel that strongly about any of these running backs coming in. And again, I kind of feel like I build my teams to try and compete immediately. So I'm going to just talk about Diggs and DeAndre Hopkins as basically the same player. They're both ended up in high volume offenses. First year on the offenses last year, both had near career high or career high in yardage and targets and catches. So they were both heavily used immediately in a shortened off season. So with more time to work with the teams, and the Bills are basically staying the same, except for they're losing John Brown, I believe. I think he's gone.
I think you're right.
I think he's gone. So not that he'll see a huge bump in that because he already saw so many targets, but even if he gets 5% more and receiving more fantasy value next year immediately, they'll probably bring someone else in, some free agent that's a little higher. But I still am not worried about Diggs at all this year. And then Hopkins, also not worried about. I think that offense is just going to want to run the ball or want to throw the ball a ton. So if they can both maintain value, I really like where this team started with Diggs and then DeAndre Hopkins at the turn. They're both on their side. So again, I'm starting with the idea that I need to compete today.
Yeah, I love that zero RB build there with Diggs and Hopkins. I mean, Hopkins even more so because, when receivers change teams, it's usually not a good thing and it takes a while. But Hopkins went from the wide receiver 10 in 2019 on Houston to the wide receiver 10 in 2020 on Arizona. So that, he's just a supremely talented player. And he gets the volume he needs, and he's going to be awesome. With Kyler Murray throwing him the ball too. For
years to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He is, 29, but it's still a great situation for him. And
yeah. And that was my idea with Diggs. He's tied to that quarterback for the foreseeable future because I'll talk about him later, but the Bills are going to be most likely either using the 5th-year option, which I don't know the deadline, but it's early in the season or early in the off season. So they're either going to have Allen locked up through that, or they're going to extend him, and I think they should extend him. He is clearly what they wanted in a quarterback. So Diggs tied to that is really going to be safe, give him a safe floor every single year that he's on that team. All right, Foz, you started talking about Swift earlier. Any Want to elaborate or?
Nah, it's just just young, excited, scheme change in his favor, coaching change in his favor. I mean, he's gonna be, their passing game is gonna be so limited. Like if they're gonna put any points on the board, it's gonna have to go through the running back. So I'm excited about him. Getting him at the early second round, I think, is where you should draft him in your startups. Like if you get him there, get him there.
Yep, I agree. I think I would have gone Swift if he had made it to me. I think if he gets a full workload there, 20 touches per game at least, he's a lock to be an RB1. And the offensive line's actually pretty good in Detroit, which is a little surprising, but it was pretty good last year. So yeah, and then after that, I was really tempted by the Dobbins and Akers, and long-term wise, in retrospect, I probably should have gone Akers. I just fear they're going to bring someone else in to share with him a little bit, but he was amazing down the stretch, and no question was the every down workhorse, and was really good. And the offense should be better under Stafford. So I'm having a little bit of a FOMO here instead of going Henry instead of Akers. But I mean, Henry's situation isn't going to change. He's under contract for another 2 years, I believe, this year and next year. And that team is going to keep their core together. Great offensive line, and they're committed to him. So they have 2 more years of going for a championship with this team and Henry, and Mike Evans. So the Kyle Pitts pick might have been a little risky, given the Henry core, but I still just feel like he's a lock for 12 touchdowns and 1,400 yards.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. But like you said, you painted yourself in a little bit of a corner.
I wouldn't feel so bad about missing out on Akers though there. Just because we don't know Sean McVay with a quarterback that actually can push the ball down the field,
Sure.
If McVay really trusts Stafford, McVay could have him drop back 50 times a game. And then Akers is kind of, if he's still in a timeshare, that's severely limiting his opportunity.
Yeah, the offense could look totally different. You're right.
Yeah, but maybe a little more opening. If you open up the box a little bit, maybe Akers can find the hole a little more and be a little more successful with his carries.
Yeah, so, I think it's going to be interesting to see where the volume ends up.
Yeah. So next pick, I took Calvin Ridley, just young receiver. I wanted to build this team young. My other teams were old, and I wanted young with this team. So Calvin Ridley, he's the 2 in Atlanta, probably going to be the 1 this year or next year, and he's there for who knows how long. Hopefully they bring in a decent replacement for Matt Ryan. Hopefully it's not too much of a surprise when Ryan decides to call it and they actually get someone in there that is capable. Because without a capable quarterback, I don't know if I want any part of that offense. But we'll see. I think Ridley's going to carry his own weight here, so I was happy with him.
See, I think this is great value, honestly. And I think this team, this John 3 team, is probably my favorite on the board. I don't know I think Matt Ryan this year is going to be fine. I don't think they're going to move on from Matt Ryan, and I think he's going to be fine. You have Arthur Smith coming in there who turned Ryan Tannehill into the most efficient quarterback in the NFL, and you get Matt Ryan, who's actually good. I think people forget, he's actually good. He had poor coaching for the last 2 or 3 years when Kyle Shanahan left. So we clearly need someone to coach him up. And if Arthur Smith can coach up Ryan Tannehill, I think you're gonna see some good stuff out of Calvin Ridley. Who you guys see on this board, Julio hasn't been drafted yet, and I think Julio is gonna be great value to the person who drafts him coming up.
Yeah. So Matt Ryan is not a free agent until 2024. So at least he's got a potential out after the 2021 season, but still carries a pretty big dead cap hit. So I don't see it happening yet. I think we got Matt Ryan on there for at least I think he plays through this contract.
Oh yeah, I agree. I don't see why they move on from him. To be honest, I think it was just a bad situation this year with Dan Quinn, and it's just one of those things where you have a coach who's, lost the locker room, quote unquote.
Yeah.
who's been tuned out, quote unquote, and been there forever, like, people are just going to perform. And you saw the second Raheem Morris took over, they had the spark and they were competitive for every game from there. So I feel like just like I feel like the Falcons just in general in redraft and dynasty are just going to be good value this offseason to try to acquire.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. Really, really good value there with Ridley.
But
except the running backs. Don't acquire the running backs.
We don't know who they are.
They're gonna draft Najee Harris.
Fourth overall.
We'll see.
Second round.
Yeah. All right. So let's we can probably cut down talking a little bit on some of these guys as we move forward, just so we can try and finish these 5 rounds. So I think we can let's go through the second round. We can probably talk a little bit and then pick a few guys from each of the rounds after. That makes sense?
Yeah.
All right. So Faz, J.K. Dobbins at the 205.
Yeah, I love Dobbins. I'll just get mine out of the way now. Like all three of I can be quick on both of them. Dobbins, when he was, he's just like supremely efficient in his carries on the Ravens, and they're obviously going to keep running the ball. Roman's still their offensive coordinator. Lamar's still their QB. There's still going to be this power option running attack, and Ingram's another year older and probably won't even be there. So it's going to be Dobbins' ball to carry, and he's again one of these supremely talented 22-year-old running backs who you have to have on your team. So this is a good spot for him. Jumping ahead to my other one, Miles Sanders. Just having a running quarterback there is going to do wonders for him. And I feel like the Eagles, another team, kind of like the Falcons, where just everything that could have gone wrong last season went wrong. To the point where they had to move on from their turnover-prone quarterback. They moved on from their coach, and they're just starting fresh. And even if it's Hurts or somebody else, I feel like Miles Sanders with an actual healthy offensive line where they're not going to have the most O-line combinations in the NFL this year, Miles Sanders should be ascending. Another guy you should be trying to acquire in your dynasty leagues for this season, for sure. And then George Kittle. I just wanted a team that had the best tight end in football. Much younger than Travis Kelce.
He was the second tight end drafted. I think Thor might disagree about him being the best tight end. So why do you think that? Why do you think he's the best for dynasty purposes?
Well, for dynasty, I mean, you look at his age and you look at that offense, and he's proven that he can produce with, replacement level quarterback play with Jimmy Garoppolo. We know Jimmy G's he's serviceable at probably his best. And barring injury, George Kittle is, going to produce at an elite level. And given his age and given, the 49ers looking to upgrade a quarterback. So the worst, from what I've read about the 49ers, the worst case scenario for them is Jimmy G's comes back as their QB. So you got to think, as George Kittle, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be the number one tight end. He's younger, Kelsey's older, and just moving forward, got to have Kittle. Got to have Kittle over Kelsey in a startup for sure.
I'll respectfully disagree. I know we talked a little off air, but Kelsey's technically under contract through 2024 with Mahomes and just had his career best season at age 31. I agree with you that Kittle, is the more explosive player at this point, more talented at this point. But the QB situation is a little in flux in San Francisco, and he has produced. I'll give you that he has produced with poor quarterback play in the past. But I just don't see the Kelsey ceiling going away anytime soon. He doesn't look like a world beater out there anymore, but Mahomes trusts him and they love him there. He's going to keep being a red zone target. He's going to keep getting his targets. I know it's fun to hate on Kelsey because he's not a very likable guy, but I just don't see the situation changing there for at least a few more years.
So I know earlier we mentioned that it's not likely for someone to finish number one at their position for back-to-back years. Kelsey has, according to this half PPR league that I'm looking at, he's finished as the tight end 1 in 5 straight years. So
I think that's more of an indictment on the tight end play than it is Travis Kelce's talent level.
Yeah, you guys know I've talked about it. It's if you get the number one, number two tight end, you're good. If you don't, you better wait. That's really my motto, and I broke that motto in this draft, so we'll get to that one. But that's I've been preaching on that for a couple of years now, and it's Kelsey is the reason why you if you can get that number one, number two tight end, it is really valuable.
Yep.
I want Thor to tell me about CD Lamb. I just want you to wax poetic because he's just like so awesome, and I love that pick.
Yeah, I was thinking about this too. Like, I think I took him in the right spot, like for a long-term team, and having him with Metcalf, paired is just like absurd. Like, I don't have to worry about receivers like ever again until I'm like 40 years old. Which is awesome. But I was tempted by some of the running backs here, but if Dak stays in Dallas with Lamb, it's just going to keep being fireworks. He was incredible as a rookie too. I know Jefferson overshadowed him, but Lamb was extremely efficient, and he thrived as a big slot guy, and I'm sure he'll move outside more next year if Gallup goes away, and there'll be more opportunities for big plays for him. But he played really well in that number two, number three wide receiver chair there. And as long as Dak stays around, we have 6, 7, 8 more years of prime CD Lamb, and I think everyone knows that he's really good, and the offense is clearly still going to remain pass heavy. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So
Who do you want to talk about, John?
All right. So I'll go with Cam Akers. I went with him at the 207. Felt really happy that he fell to there. He was talked about a couple other times earlier. I think having that young, solid workhorse running back is going to be a good part of this team. And to not take him and take I considered a tight end. I did, but I kind of figured it wasn't worth it yet. But Akers, I'm not worried about his usage at all. I think that they will bring someone in, but I don't think it's someone that's going to really be a huge threat to his time on the field. So that's I was good with Akers. So then my next team was my team that I drafted Dalvin Cook and picked Aaron Jones. I don't know where he's going to be. If he stays on the Packers, he's going to be a focal point of the offense. If he goes to another team, he's going to get paid to be the focal point of the running back room. So I'm not that worried. I doubted him last year, and he proved me wrong. I've regretted not taking him in a redraft league, and I don't want to make that mistake again. So I'm taking him at the end of the second round here, pairing him with Dalvin Cook and hoping to build a team that can really compete right now.
Yeah, I just think his landing spot matters so much with his production, and it's tough. I mean, as an Aaron Jones owner in redraft, I felt like I was begging him to get the ball more, and then at times, you see him, kind of come off injured every now and then, or he has those fumbles when he gets hit. I don't know, man. Aaron Jones may be a landmine where he goes,
He could be, and I am well aware of it when I took this one, but I think for the most part, he should, if anyone's bringing him in with all the money they have, some of the higher money teams that I think are real landing possibilities are decent landing spots. The Dolphins, I wouldn't be too upset with him going there. Yeah. Packers or the Steelers, I know they don't have a ton of money, but maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I wasn't too worried about it, but there is concern.
Yeah, so, I think you're right.
It was a risky play.
Yeah, I think you're right. He'll command a decent amount of money with what he's done, and I'm sure he'll get at worst a 1A role, which he basically had last year too. So.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So we already kind of Thor, you want to talk about Michael Thomas? I think I want to hear why Michael Thomas there.
I mean, why not? I mean, I think that's a great value, honestly. Like, I think I could have gone, Zeke or Mixon, or I took Hilaire next, one of those guys. But Michael Thomas was still really good with Taysom Hill last year, and I already had McCaffrey. I knew I was going to get one of these running backs. And being a 3 wide receiver league, I wanted to get at least the wide receiver 1 locked up. And I think at worst, Michael Thomas is a low end wide receiver 1 for the next few years, and I could see his game aging pretty well as well.
Right.
He was like the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver in Dynasty last year. And
2015.
And I think too, it's worth noting he was like super injured this past year, and like even when he was playing with a lot. And,
right.
I think the injury needs to be in quotes because there's a lot of weird stuff happening there that I think we don't know about.
Well, I think he's had like a few surgeries and like, right?
He has, but there was a bunch of stuff that there was the suspension from the team.
Well, yeah, the fight in practice, yeah, but
there seemed to be some other stuff going on behind closed doors. So, but I think he's a safe pick. But I just wanted to hear a reason.
Well, he's an Ohio State guy, so you never know, right?
If you like Ohio State, we're sorry.
You're not going to hear any.
Foz will try and turn it.
Yeah. So I did draft an Ohio State guy with my first pick in the 3rd round, though. But we'll let Thor talk about his hate pick of Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Well, I was going to say, do we each want to pick out 2 of our picks here in this 3rd round? We each can mention 2 of our picks, and then we'll go further on.
Yeah. I'll start since I'm first. But the only pick I do kind of regret here is Clyde Edwards. I just hate Zeke. He just doesn't look. He looks slow. He doesn't look like athletic anymore. When Tony Pollard's on the field, he looks better than Zeke every time. And I know Zeke is tethered to Dak and a pretty good offensive line still. I just hate drafting running backs at that age. And I know Edwards-Helaire had a down year 1, but running backs drafted in the 1st round are almost always end up working out. So I went back there. He looked good in the Super Bowl. He looked good down the stretch at points this year. I think he's got the juice. And I think the Mixon pick was great too. Really good value. Bengals still an ascending team. They just need to add more help along the offensive line. Once Burrow gets back, I could easily see Mixon putting up RB1 numbers. And then, Eckler and Moore, also great picks. Just saying.
If Penny Sewell falls to
Cincinnati,
goes at like 5, that's like
that Mixon
huge.
Yeah, gigantic.
I think it could happen. I think we get a bunch. I think we're going to get movement up into the top 4, and we could possibly see 4 QBs go.
Yeah.
I would not be shocked if it's another one of those drafts.
Well, whoever drafts Zach Wilson is going to be severely disappointed for another show.
All right, Foz, who do you want to talk about?
I feel like I love my Terry McLaurin pick. Just like I probably should have picked Mixon, just with how the team is built. Like having Saquon and Mixon would just be like unreal. But McLaurin, I just love his profile moving forward. I mean, his QB situation has been probably the worst in the NFL since he entered it. With you look at him in 2019 where he was playing with Dwayne Haskins, and then they fired Gruden, and then they have Bill Callahan, who runs the damn ball more than anyone, just feeding 35-year-old Adrian Peterson for no reason. And McLaurin still was a wide receiver too. Then you get this year with Ron Rivera, and who wants to run the ball a little more, and then they have another volatile QB situation with Smith and Haskins and Heineke, and McLaurin still wide receiver too. So I feel like we've seen his floor, and he's so young. He is a supreme athlete. Just like any error in his favor for the Washington football team, and you're talking about a guy who I think will easily finish in the top 10. Easily. Just any type of progression in that offense. So I feel like this is great value here at the top of the 3rd round with McLaurin. Considering the wide receivers that went after him, I would take him. There's not a wide receiver that went after him that I would take. There are definitely guys I'd be excited about, but in terms of dynasty and moving forward, McLaurin's the guy for me if I want like a wide receiver 1 moving forward, because these other guys in this round, I drafted T. Higgins and Amari Cooper with some of my other picks here. I like McLaurin way better than either of those 2 players, even though I do like Higgins and obviously Cooper if Dak does well. Or Dak, comes back to the Cowboys.
So you drafted Pat Mahomes as the first QB off the board. I'm assuming that has something to do with the Tyreek Hill pick.
Yeah, I mean having the bubble is always nice. With Dynasty, you're kind of like, there's your upside right there. Which, because that team, I'm not really a big fan of that team in general. With Montgomery and Woods coming after there, but with that Mahomes and Hill upside, I mean, you're gonna have weeks where those two just win. Like, doesn't matter how many, David Montgomery, you get like 8 carries, and Mahomes and Hill will combine for 75 points, and there we go, we're off and running.
Yep.
And I just feel like he's the best QB. In a startup, if you can have that type of leverage each week, and you can tie it to another QB, one of their wide receivers that have so much upside, especially one like Tyreek Hill, who's going to be explosive. I mean, you're cooking.
Yeah, I agree. He's my dynasty quarterback. I've tried to trade him. I just can never pull the trigger. I'm afraid to, because of how good he actually can be. And having him as a part of the team makes my team better. And in this case, it makes your team better right now.
Yeah. Mahomes, he's just the perfect combination of efficient in the red zone and explosive everywhere else. It's awesome.
Right. I think you drafted him in the perfect spot too. We're getting to the back end of the running back tier, good running back tier, and then entering kind of like the wide receiver 2, portion of the draft where, you're throwing more darts than, he was starting to throw a little bit of darts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was very happy that you took Mahomes there, because that let Josh Jacobs fall to me on a team that I had started with 2 young receivers. So I was really happy to get what I think is a true workhorse running back. Hopefully he can get more 3-down work and actually be involved in the pass game a little more. And we'll see if they can do that. But even without the passing work, he still has been a great fantasy running back the past couple of years. So I was really happy to have Josh Jacobs fall to me at the back end of the 3rd round. That felt like a really good value. So that's one of my picks that I was really happy with. The other pick I'll talk about in this round, Allen Robinson. Like we mentioned, it's kind of, we're at the dart throw, the wide receiver 2s. Robinson is the wide receiver 1 in Chicago, but is he going to be there? I think so. I don't know. They should tag him, right?
I don't know. Either way, with A-Rob though, I feel like, again, he's one of these QB-proof receivers who, maybe starting to get up there, but even if he goes somewhere else, he's gonna be fine. And he's like, as your 3rd wide receiver, especially, that's insane.
Yeah. So I something interesting that I heard last week. If they franchise tag him, it's actually not the same franchise cost as everyone else, because his contract value is actually above the franchise cost for wide receiver position. So it would be 120% of what his pay was last year. So he gets an elevated franchise tag cost just because of that. So is that his actual market value? Will they want to pay him more than the franchise tag, or more than the normal franchise tag, just to have him? So we'll see. But like you said, he's bad quarterback proof. He's proven that year after year. So I'm not that worried. If he stays there, he's the wide receiver 1. If he goes somewhere else, probably still going to be close to the wide receiver 1 on that team. At least a 1A, 1B type situation anywhere he goes. So, but yeah, starting with the 3 wide receivers, I don't need to draft another wide receiver for a while on that team. And I'm really happy with that setup. So, all right. So the whole 3rd round went Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Terry McLaurin, Zeke, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, Austin Eckler, Pat Mahomes, Josh Jacobs, DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, then Allen Robinson. I think we talked about all the really our favorite picks, our least favorite picks, just kind of jumped into them. Most of them were right near their ADP, so nothing really crazy jumped out here.
I love the Eckler pick and the zero RB team. Love
Thank
that.
you. I love that. That's my favorite team actually. That 4-3.
Yeah.
Yep. I have a tie for my favorite, but I'll mention the other one later. So going into round 4, I'll start because we're going back the other way. I'll start with my favorite pick of this round for me. I was happy to get Antonio Gibson as my RB1. It felt like pretty decent value. I don't really think the Redskins know, or the Washington football team. Sorry, I don't think they know what they're doing. I really don't think they have a great plan, which means that Gibson is most likely their plan. He had a great first year, and if he continues, he's one of those guys that they really thought was going to be a good pass catcher, and we didn't really see that. We didn't see that last year. So if they can just utilize him more in the pass game, he'll break into that top 12 running backs. But they got to use him as a receiver to get there.
Yeah, and anytime you can feed J.D. McKissic 10 targets a game, you got to do it.
Yeah,
Gotta do it.
I don't know why they continue to do that, but hopefully, I don't know if he's under contract. He probably is. They probably gave him an extension after that performance. But
I agree with you, John. I think like I don't know if you looked at player profiles, dynasty rankings, but he's a top 12 overall player there.
Yes, I actually looked at that after you had sent it, or after you told us about it, and I was shocked to see him there.
Right, and I think what that takes into account is he does grow into his role as a pass catcher, and then he could easily vault up to the second round or even late first next year. That's not crazy to say at all.
This is an easy return on value in year 2 on
Yeah,
this team.
I thought it was a good pick.
I think my only hang up with it is like those J.D. McKissic touches. Is that an indication that Ron Rivera doesn't trust Gibson, which could also just be an indication of the the no off season and the COVID stuff. But we know Rivera will give the ball to one back if he has it, or like in the Super Bowl year, he'll be throwing the ball to Mike Tolbert. So if he doesn't believe it, he'll put someone else in for sure. So it'll be very interesting to see how that goes. But I err on the side with you guys where Gibson will be the guy.
The guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So my other pick I want to talk about, my least favorite pick of this draft, Darren Waller. I don't know why I did it. I regretted it as soon as I posted it in the chat, and I really wish I went with someone that was picked in the next round instead of Waller. My logic for going with Waller is he really was used so heavily in that offense, and I don't really see that change. I don't talk this long that much, apparently. But I don't see that changing all that much this year. So I think he's a safe pick, but that's not what this team needed, starting off with Devontae Adams. I needed a little bit more. So not very happy with the Waller pick. I wish I could take that back. But
no, that's my least favorite pick of the draft too. I mean, there's guys like Hawkinson out there and Goddard and people that are going to be drafted much later.
5-6 rounds later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Odell's sitting right there.
I don't.
Jamar Chase is right there.
Oh.
Yeah. It wouldn't have been Odell. I do think if I could take it back, I would have gone with one of the rookie running backs. I probably would have gone with Najee Harris at that spot, just to give me a little more youth on this team.
Yeah.
So that's my problem with that one. How about you, Foz? 2 picks.
I love the 2 wide receivers I drafted here with DJ Chark and Odell Beckham. I just feel like Urban Meyer going to Jacksonville, as much as I hate everything about him, I feel like he's just going to be such a boon for that offense, and getting Trevor Lawrence there. I mean, we saw DJ Chark in 2019 really blow up. I think he finished in the top 12, if I'm not mistaken. And there's no reason why that can't happen again coming into this year with an offense that should be improved, with an offensive with an offensive coach who has been successful everywhere he's coached, offensively especially. So I feel like DJ Chark here in the 4th round is just like outstanding value, and another guy where I think I would not be surprised if he's finishing in the top 10 at all, like not at all. And I would plant my flag in that. Odell, same way. Like I feel like he was trending in the right direction when he got hurt. And just from like what I've read from like the fantasy doctors on Twitter, Odell's injury is gonna not hamper his athleticism at all. So I know he's been like an oft injured guy, but this is not one of the ones that's gonna really hold him back. And in terms of, I hate, and the other one, my other pick, my David Montgomery pick, absolutely hate it. My hate pick. I should have picked one of the rookie running backs or James Robinson. I would not draft, if I had to go back and do this again, I would not draft David Montgomery again in this spot, and nor should you. He should still be available in this mock draft. That was a big blind spot pick for me right there.
I will say David Montgomery is probably the number one sell high candidate in all of Dynasty football right now.
Absolutely. Had like the backfield to himself against like the lightest run defense schedule he could possibly face down the stretch.
Yeah.
Like you have to sell him. Like it was such a dumb pick by me.
But we're doing this draft right now, so there's still plenty of time in this offseason, so you can flip him.
Yeah, I'll trade you him in my next pick for Javonte Williams.
No.
It's not a bad deal.
All right, Thor.
Yeah, I think the 2 picks I'd want to highlight here are Brandon Ayuk and Jamar Chase. I will say with the Galladay pick too, it was a little risky, but he was a clear top 12 guy last year, and we just don't know where he's going to end up. I personally would like to see him on the Giants. I think that's a good fit, and I think he would retain a lot of value there. But with Ayuk and Chase, Ayuk had a really special rookie season too. Like that guy was really freaking good, and he wasn't just like catching dump offs like Deebo Samuel. He was making plays down the field, and I feel like with the value here, being drafted in the same area as Cortland Sutton, Cooper Kupp, Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, I think Ayuk's ceiling is like no question higher than all of those guys. And I think he outproduced everyone except Deontay of that group last year. So I'm really happy with the value there. And, I think, if I had done this over, I think he belongs in the tier with Keenan, Mike Evans, and DJ Chark. But I feel like most of the fantasy community doesn't want to move him up to that tier yet. With Jamar Chase, he's just a special prospect. He's going to be a top 10 pick. And, this is a little risky because we don't know where he ends up. I'm hoping he goes to somewhere like the Lions where he'll just get like 120 targets year one, and they're Jared Goff targets, but whatever. But I like the value here at the end of round 4, and he's going to be. It would not be surprising for him to be a 2nd round pick, kind of like a CeeDee Lamb or something like that next year, if things go well. I think he's a very special prospect, and it'd be a shocker if he didn't go top 10 in the NFL draft.
Totally agree.
Yep.
His ceiling is Calvin Johnson.
Right. And just remember that he outproduced Justin Jefferson at LSU, being a year younger than Justin Jefferson. So, and look what Jefferson did in year 1.
It'll be fun to see.
Yeah, he's a guy I can't wait to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
To watch.
All right, Thor, you want to round us into the 5th and final round of this?
Yeah, I honestly think you guys fell asleep on the rookies a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll admit, I completely forgot that rookies, we were doing it because they're not included on any list of rankings right now.
Right.
For the most part.
Right.
So when I'm looking at it, have rookies listed. So I just blind spot. And that's when I realized when I took Waller, it was like, I would have taken a rookie there, but I missed my chance. So
yeah.
You got it started.
I did. I was happy with both Chase and Harris. Harris is 35. I think with Harris, you again, a little risky because you don't know where he's going, but he's the type of guy that should be the lead running back on a team, and he's a good pass catcher. So if he goes to someone like the Steelers or something like that, which would make a lot of sense. Team that's up against cap doesn't want to pay Connor, needs a lead running back. It'd be easy to see him vault into, second round dynasty value. By the time people are doing mock drafts in, June, July, August, or doing real drafts in June, July, August. So I think at this point he really does belong kind of after the Zeke, Mixon, Eckler, Jacobs tier. I think he belongs right there with Gibson and Montgomery and Jacobs. So I was really happy to get him at the start of round 5. Juju hated the pick, but hopefully he goes somewhere else. I think he was hurt this year. He had knee issues all year. He was missing practice a lot. Hopefully, I still believe in the young production at a really young age from him. And the only other pick here was the other pick that I want to mention was Kyle Pitts. He should be another top 10 pick in the real NFL, and he should be a starting tight end right away. A little risky with how I built that team, like I mentioned before. I'm built to kind of win now with Mike Evans, Henry, and DJ Moore, but I think Pitts at worst is a top 5 tight end next year, and is a top 5 dynasty tight end moving forward. So probably not the best use of my pick there, but I'm really high on him, and he should be an elite player, similar to Jamar Chase.
So there was some talk recently about NFL scouts rating him as a wide receiver. What happens to your team if that happens?
If he gets shifted to receiver, I'm kind of concerned, to be honest. I feel like that's I want him playing tight end. Like I want to use him at tight end in fantasy. Like if he gets wide receiver eligibility instead, that would knock him down for me for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if that's another one of the his agent getting people to talk him up as a wide receiver to get a little bit of money.
Yeah,
it's happened before. So
Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, so I don't blame him if he wants to get some money, but let's think about the fantasy players here.
Yeah.
All right, Foz, who do you want to bring up here?
So I think it's worth mentioning my Rams wide receiver picks in this one. I just feel Kupp and Robert Woods, with Matthew Stafford now throwing them the ball. I mentioned earlier the volume uptick that could happen with McVay, with a quarterback that he trusts pushing the ball down the field, a quarterback he gave up a lot to acquire. So I just feel like, Woods and Kupp that have had, essentially the entire pass catching opportunity in the Rams offense under McVay, any uptick in volume with them is going to lead to some blow up. Woods is just a guy I've loved having rostered forever. He's just this high floor. Kupp very similar. Just these high floor wide receivers that you want to have in this area that have this type of upside with, a new quarterback coming in and an offense that could see more volume. I am concerned with if game script concerns me with them primarily. If their defense still plays elite and they're not behind in games at all, like it's going to be pretty hard for them to really, really blow up. But again, high floor, both of those squads that need like that secure, solid floor. And then we talk about James Robinson, again, another Urban Meyer thing, where just the way he runs his offense, he runs like a power run scheme out of spread. So it's a lot of shotgun runs. It's a lot of 11 personnel runs, one tight end, one running back. And so if James Robinson remains the only guy in that backfield, which that's my only hang up, like the Jaguars could very easily add an ETN or a Javonte Williams or a Kenny Gainwell at the end, in the early second round there. So that's my big concern. But if not, James Robinson, if he's the only guy in that backfield, you're talking, again, another RB1 type of season.
Yeah, I like the value there with Robinson, but definitely a scary floor if they do take someone.
I'm not all that concerned with them bringing someone in. I feel like there's other holes that they need to fill more, especially with the pick that it will take to get one of those top 3 running backs. So,
see, if it was the same coach from last year, I wouldn't be that concerned either. But with if Urban Meyer has a guy he wants, he's gonna draft them and be like, I'm just gonna give him this is the guy I want on my team. Like I can see if it was Doug Marrone coming back, doesn't want to be all right. We're gonna get some competition for Robinson, that type of thing.
Right.
Draft another one of these rookies. But like Urban Meyer will come in and just, this is the guy I want to have the ball, and that's exactly
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so my picks that I want to talk about, Javonte Williams, my 5th pick in. Oh man, Javonte Williams, my 5th pick on my favorite team. Pairing him with Josh Jacobs as my top 2 running backs feels like a really smart move. We don't know where Williams is going to go, but from watching some of the tape, he does look like a 3-down back, going to be the workhorse, doesn't go down easy. I think that any team is going to be happy when they draft him in the NFL. So obviously landing spot does matter. So if he goes somewhere with already a defined RB1, then he drops way down my board. But right now, not knowing where he could go and having there be some really good options, I'm really happy to have Williams on the team. And then Josh Allen on team 4, just pairing him with Diggs, I like that. And I feel like having him as the third quarterback off the board, I think it might have been a little early to go with him, but I knew he wasn't coming back to this team. So I needed to take him with this pick or my next pick. And I felt that this pick was fine. And we'll see where it goes, this team, but I'm really happy having Josh Allen. I'm not worried about him at all.
Yeah, I thought that was a good pick too, and love the Diggs stack. If you had Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs in the championship game last year, you would have probably won your league. So
yeah,
that's the game against New England, right?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they both exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we made it through 5 rounds. So I think we should each talk about the favorite team. Next time we do this, I'm going to bring a bottle of water with me. But so everyone, what's your favorite team? Foz, what are you thinking?
I love Thor 3. I just think like that, like having those wide receivers and then Austin Eckler as your running back is just such a great build. Like there's so much upside. The floor isn't bad either. Like, because Eckler's gonna get his in the in the air too, with that offense opening up as well, and then just so much potential, like so much upside even too, with Dak coming back from Lamb and Golladay possibly landing in somewhere more favorable for him. It's just an excellent team. That's probably my favorite.
Yeah, I had a tie. I put that Thor 3 for the same exact reasons. It just seems like so much upside. And then I also had my John 3. Similar idea, just so much upside with those young wide receivers. This team should be good for years, but I also have a piece of that Chargers offense that should only improve. So really happy with that team as well.
Yeah, I also had a tie between Thor 1, Thor 2, Thor 3, and Thor 4. Just kidding. I also was really happy with the Thor 3 team, how that one fell together. Part of me wishes I got one of Akers or Sanders there instead of Lamb, but it's hard to see this team with that wide receiver core. If I can add another running back or two, I'm definitely going to be a juggernaut for a while, and early, and that's what you want in Dynasty. Yeah. I also really liked John 1. Sutton and Deontay as your primary receivers is a little scary, but I love that running back core. And then I also liked Foz 4 a lot, assuming the Jaguars don't draft a running back receiver.
Another about Thor 3. So in this league, we have 3 starting wide receivers, and both flex can be wide receivers. So you can start 5 in a week. So you have 4 top 24. So you're good.
Right.
Least favorite teams. I'm gonna start this one. John too, just taking Waller there instead of any of those wide receivers, any of the rookie running backs. If I took a wide receiver or a running back, I think I would have felt very differently about this. But that was too early to take Waller, and it really messed everything up. And it's going to be tough to fix this team later, because if I find good value at another tight end later, it's not necessarily going to be a helpful pick. So
right.
And that's where the value is. Once you miss those top couple, it's worth waiting. So
yeah, that would have been my pick as well. If we're gonna pick a different one, I think my Foz 1 team. I mean, it's not that I don't like the players. It's just there's so many other ways I could have gone that would have made it more or less volatile. And I feel like it has a high floor, but I should have gone Mixon over McLaurin. I could have gone Najee over Kyler, or Etienne over Kyler, Robinson over Kyler. Like so many other ways I could have gone. I don't hate the Cup pick. That's probably other than Saquon and Cup, that's probably the only two picks I wouldn't have done anything differently in those situations.
Yeah, I Foz, I'm actually with you. I was just looking at your Foz 1 team, and I don't love it, but I did love the Cup value. I think that was the perfect spot to take him. Saquon was the obvious pick at number 2, but I think the Kittle, McLaurin, Murray picks, I personally would have gone a different direction, and it makes it a little scary for me. And I also feel like I screwed up. Floor 1 should have been dominant, but I just feel like I took too many risks, and I don't feel great about Michael Thomas or Edwards-Helaire. I could see that team potentially being bad if these rookies don't go to good spots too. So that scares me a little bit.
Yeah. So so overall, I think first 5 rounds we have a few really good teams, a couple not great but okay, and then a couple bad. So
fantasy football, man.
I can't talk about it any longer. A couple notes that I had that kind of just wanted to bring up. So again, based on ADP, which we're not necessarily saying is the end all be all for your draft strategy, it is important to look at when you're making some decisions. It's better to reach on a player than let the player slip by. So the best value according to ADP from this draft, any ideas who was the latest the most after value pick?
Elliott.
Nope. Pause, you got one?
Oh man. I'm gonna go Eckler.
James Robinson.
Wow. People are way too high on Robinson.
His ADP is 36. So it's safe to say that none of us would have had him in any other draft with most other people.
Yeah.
The biggest reach, any ideas on who the biggest reach is? According to ADP, it was 42 spots.
Whoa.
That's huge.
42 spots early. And we had a couple of really high picks. So 42. It's a surprising one, and I think ADP is broken on this.
Is it Lamb?
No, it's Chase Claypool. His ADP currently is listed as 97. That's broken. He was going to be picked by me later in this round if he didn't get picked. So, but ADP is not perfect. But it's
are we looking at? I don't know. Is that like 2020 ADP?
Yeah, exactly. But it's a tool we have, and we should all consider it. Take it with a grain of salt. That's my comment on that. So thanks for listening.